My Stihl Hedge trimmer was binding up, so I decided to take it apart and check out what was wrong. So I took off the little plastic cover on the bottom, and I kind of wanted to see how this thing worked. This repair, you don't really need to take off the whole bar assembly like that, but this gave me a look at the clutch in there and the little drum that it engages against. And by hand, I can cycle that and stroke the blades. Um, but I wanted to see a little bit more what the problem was, so I took the blades off the bar assembly so I could get into that gearbox a little better. So once the blades were off, I was able to see that the spur gear in here, the lobes, the little cams built into that spur gear, were badly worn, so it wasn't allowing the blades to have a complete and full stroke, and it would bind up at times. So I ordered a new spur gear sprocket and gonna put that in. I didn't know how that spur gear came out, so I was wondering if maybe the pin that it was on was pressed or something. So I tapped on it a little bit. Turns out it was just had some grease on it. It just slides in and out. It's not held in by anything. Just a little shim and the bad spur gear. And then the one I ordered, I just matched it up to make sure that it was going to be the right fit. It looked like everything lined up good. So just going to kind of slide it in and see how it looks and if that's going to resolve the problem. Cleaned up the clutch assembly a little bit there with some brake clean. And then put the bar back on. Put the housing back in place, put those screws, those 5 screws back on, or rather 3 screws back on that hold that in place. And then while I'm at it, cleaning things up, getting the grease off, start it with some clean fresh grease. Fits in there nice. Putting the blades back on. And this is when I realized that one of the 2 blades was actually broken, so I looked into replacing it, and they're really expensive, so I opted to repair mine. You can see the broken part of it and where it was worn into that bad lobe as well. It wore into the blade itself, so kind of tack that up. Grind it flush again, build it up a little bit more, repeat the process. And then using a file to get the inside cleaned up. But it had a lot of tolerance at the top, and I didn't want it to fail or wear out prematurely, so I attempt to build up that inside with a MIG welder, which is at my dad's place, and I don't have a TIG welder there. I would have preferred maybe that process, but make do with what you have. So ground it up again, filed it down, and got the clearance more where I wanted it, and I thought that was fine. So then it kind of binds up as it rotates through. It's not perfectly flat, so a little bit more grinding if I need to. I kind of forged it a little bit, beat on it a little on the anvil, and then it was able to fully cycle within that cam lobe without binding up on the blade. And putting the blades back on, adding some grease to the gearbox, shims in place. Putting the blade on, I put a little bit of Loctite on these since you don't want to fully tighten them up, otherwise the blade won't stroke. So tightened them up snug and then backed them off, and hope the Loctite holds. Just sort of turning the drive gear here and making sure it's not going to bind up or anything like that. Back in working order, so I'm happy. Thanks for watching. I hope you like and subscribe.